It was simply a small stumble in the courtyard, and a child's breath caught where it shouldn't have. One single second between laughing and falling down, and then, out of nowhere, Princess Charlotte fell to the ground and didn't move. The medical crew rushed in quickly, but what happened next didn't come from a doctor or her father. It came from Camilla, who quietly told them to conduct a DNA assay that no one else had given them permission to do. When the results came in, the guard didn't say anything or move. He simply turned and cried, "Before we tell you what secret the DNA test found and how it almost killed a royal child, please leave a comment telling us what you would have done differently if you were Camilla. Also, please tap like, hit subscribe, and push the bell button so you never miss a new Royal Guard story. Because it wasn't betrayal that broke the guard today. It was how long the truth had been there in front of them. The light in the Windsor courtyard was getting softer. The low autumn sun was shining through the old stone walls and sending long golden shadows through the eastern columns. The last half hour of school was coming to an end, and the private academic section of the estate was quiet. A few parents' cars had started to line the inside edge, with drivers standing calmly next to them. The guards were in the middle of a shift change, polishing their boots and standing their guns up. They switched posts without saying a word. Sergeant Harland Crest stood where he always did, at the entrance to the private education wing and the inner palace corridor. He had worn the Coldstream Guard's red tunic for so long that he didn't notice how heavy it was anymore, only how strict it was. Harland had once served in Helmand, Afghanistan. He was in his mid-30s, had broad shoulders, and had the kind of calm presence that only tough men had. That kind of service left stuff behind. But there he was, calm, reliable, and quiet. The end of the hall made a soft chime sound, which meant that classes were over. The first person to come out was Princess Charlotte. She donned a navy jacket and a plaid skirt, and she had her satchel nicely over one shoulder. As she strolled next to her teacher, her braids bounced a little as she laughed at something he said. Her posture showed a quiet defiance. She was confident, calm, and already more regal at 9 than most adults Harland had guarded. He didn't smile, but he felt a little warmth rise up from inside. And then, all of a sudden, she stopped. Her foot slipped. She reached out with her arm. Then out of nowhere, she fell to her knees. The teacher gasped and fell forward to catch her, but Charlotte fell sideways onto the stone. Her face grew white, her lips trembled, and she held her chest as if the air itself had left her. "Medical," someone yelled. "Now, medical team." Harland moved right away, boots on the ground and guns slung over his shoulder. In 4 steps, he got to the child and bent down. "Ma'am," he remarked in a quiet voice, "are you able to hear me?" Her eyes blinked. 2 aides ran in from the hallway. Harland carefully picked up Charlotte's petite body and held her in his arms, being careful not to tilt her head too far. The aide called ahead on the radio and said, "Emergency response, Royal Suite, now." She passed out just as the interstate medical team was on its way. Camilla got there too soon, just a few minutes later. She was meant to be recording an interview in the West Wing, but instead she was there, heels clicking on the stone, hair perfectly done, and a folder in her arms. She looked at Charlotte and then at the soldiers. "Take her to the private medical wing," she told them. One aide said, "That's not her assigned facility. Protocol sends all emergencies to." I said private wing. Harland was unsure. This was not allowed. There was a problem. But Charlotte's breathing was getting weaker. He granted the go-ahead. "Move," he shouted to the squad as he stepped up next to the stretcher, with his weapons slung over his shoulder, and his eyes squinted. He would go with her every step of the way. And this time, nothing would get past him. The private medical wing of Windsor was quiet on purpose. Its cream-colored hallways were soundproofed, and its polished walnut doors were closed to foot traffic. Only senior members of the royal family and very rare crises may use it. This time of year, it was usually deserted. But now, when the stretcher with Princess Charlotte on it was wheeled down the main hallway, the air was thick with tension. Harland strolled next to it, one hand on the rail and the other at his belt. He wasn't holding a weapon, but he was ready to brace himself in case her body moved again. He maintained his stride steady, but his eyes were always moving, the oxygen flow tube, the monitor leads, and the pupil reaction. He has seen battlefield injuries that weren't as bad as this. At the triage bay, they encountered the lead doctor, a calm man in his 50s with gray temples and steady hands. "Get a cardiac monitor," he said. "Blood oxygen panel. Start IV fluids." A nurse pushed the apparatus over. Someone with gloves on slowly unbuttoned Charlotte's uniform blouse. They put in the electrodes. She kept breathing shallowly, The doctor scowled. Could be an acute reaction, something eaten or breathed in. A different doctor looked at her chart. She doesn't have any known allergies. Doesn't mean one wasn't there. The senior doctor turned around. We might need to do a compatibility scan before we give her antihistamines. If she has a rare blood marker, it could make things worse. He reached for the rapid response cabinet, which is a lock-sealed tray with sterile genetic test kits that are only utilized in very rare circumstances. Each one had a panel that could only be used once and could scan for known reasons why emergency drugs shouldn't be used. Camila's words cut through the room like a taut thread as he got ready to open it. "Don't use that one," she replied in a clear voice. "Get the secondary kit from the Cambridge trial drawer." The room got cold. The Cambridge trial kits were part of a private medical research project that Palace Medical Ethics allowed for developmental diagnostics, but not for pediatric emergencies. The doctor was unsure. "Ma'am, that kit is not allowed for," Camilla responded. "I've already called ahead. Access is being released. Use it." The nurse turned to the head doctor. The doctor stared at Harland. Harland didn't say anything, but the way his body was still was a different type of caution. The doctor paused for a minute longer before nodding grudgingly. "Give the test." Charlotte moved a little while the swab was taken. A nurse placed it into the analyzer. Camilla walked back, snatching her phone from her coat pocket, mumbling into it in clipped, furious tones. She walked near the wall, tapping it hard. "Harland only got bits and pieces. She'll be fine. I told you we'd catch it. Just fill out the forms." The aides at the edge looked at each other. They knew what the guard knew. Something was wrong, and Charlotte's life might pay the consequence. The side door burst open with a whisper of compressed air, and Prince William entered at a rapid, determined stride. No security, no fanfare, just a sense of urgency coming from every step. His coat was still half-buttoned, and his tie was a little loose from the drive-in, but his eyes went right to the child who was unconscious on the medical table. He didn't speak right away. Charlotte's chest rose and fell slowly under the oxygen mask, and her hands were still and pale at her sides. The monitors beeped in that soft, awful way that every parent remembers. Harland reflexively stepped aside to give him room, but he was still close enough to touch. William looked at the doctor who was there. "Report." The doctor spoke in a calm voice. "Possible rare allergic reaction, either from contact or from the air. We're getting ready to give her a mild antihistamine, but her vital signs were unstable. As a precaution, we've given her a quick genetic panel to check for known medication contraindications." William stopped moving and clenched his jaw. "Who gave the go-ahead for a genetic panel?" The physician's eyes flicked briefly to the far corner of the room. Camilla stood there with her arms crossed and a tight look on her face. "I did," she responded before the doctor could say anything. "We didn't have time to get approval. I did it." William looked at her. "You did what my daughter said was okay." Camilla didn't move. "I know how the system works. I used my emergency override," William stated in a stern voice. "There is no override for this. Not unless you're her parent or doctor." "I was trying to help," she said in a harsh voice. "You weren't here." That hit like a slap. William looked back at the doctor. Was the test part of the standard panel? The doctor thought about it. "It came from the Cambridge trial drawer, sir." Harland saw it, the look of bewilderment on William's face. He answered, "That's not allowed. That kit was made for adult markers, neurodiagnostic modeling. It has never been approved for use on kids." Camilla cut in again, this time to defend herself. "It's right. It's faster. I've seen it used a lot." William moved closer and spoke more quietly. "Camilla, this isn't one of your advisory boards. This is a child. My child." The room was quiet. A nurse came in silently from the lab wing. "Results are coming in. They should be ready in 3 minutes." The doctor looked back and forth between them. "We need a minute alone," they said. Camilla lifted an eyebrow. "I'll stay." William didn't say anything. He only looked at Harland once. Not a mandate, not a question, just an agreement. Harland understood that whatever happened next was not merely medical in that quiet. It was about power, and it was already falling apart. The analytical monitor beeped once, in a quiet, clinical tone that made it clear what would happen next. With his hands behind his back, the lead doctor walked up to the screen. For a short time, no one said anything. The nurses and aides stopped moving, and Camilla's fingers tightened around the spine of the leather folder she hadn't opened since she got there. The doctor coughed. "The genetic panel has come back," he stated in a low voice. "We found a mitochondrial marker, which is an inherited change that makes people much more likely to have bad reactions to a common compound in one of the antihistamines we were about to give them." William's forehead wrinkled. "Can it be treated?" "It's possible to deal with, but it's very rare." "How rare?" The doctor turned to the terminal and opened the registry overlay. In the UK, this marker has been found in fewer than 400 people. Of those, fewer than 30 have the variant along with Charlotte's secondary polymorphism. He stopped for a moment before continuing carefully. This specific genetic signature has been recorded in our internal system before, though. It was done by a staff member named Rosemary Ellison. William blinked. The name didn't stick. Camilla didn't blink. The doctor looked at her. Miss Ellison worked in the domestic division 15 years ago. Medical records showed that she was part of a private health intervention program that was approved by a discretionary fund. According to the file, your office started this program, ma'am. Camilla's shoulders got rigid. William's voice got lower. Why does my daughter have a medical marker from a woman who worked for you and was taken off the palace system? Camilla's answer was weak. It's just a coincidence. No, it's not, the doctor responded in a monotone voice. This isn't about eye color. It's about hereditary mitochondrial inheritance. Either your office had records that showed this exact combination, or… He stopped right there. Camilla didn't say anything, but the quiet was answer enough. Sergeant Harlan Crest felt something move under his ribcage from across the room. He remembered a name that was weak and almost forgotten. Ellison. He had heard it before, a few months ago. Whispers from a staff member who was let go a long time ago. A name they were warned not to write down. A woman called Crazy. A warning that was not heeded. And now the thing she had warned about was in the child's blood. William looked at Camilla. You knew. Her voice wavered. He responded gently. You hid this. You let her grow up without that warning in her file. You put her safety at risk. Camilla didn't say no. She just stood there, pallid and stiff. As the news traveled like a shiver across the room and the medical bay, Harlan Crest felt the first quiet crack start to form. Not in the rules. Inside himself. The name rang out louder than it ever had before. Rosemary Ellison. Sergeant Harlan Crest didn't move a muscle, but his jaw tightened up. It was hard to see because his bearskin hat was casting a shadow over it. The antiseptic lights in the medical facility didn't show him anything new, yet the past came alive behind his eyes. He had heard that name before. 6 months ago, Harlan was stationed on a typical transition route in the tight corridor behind the education wing. He was accompanying personnel during a brief fire drill when a woman broke over the back security threshold, out of breath and frantic. Strangely, she didn't yell or ask for anything. She simply said one thing to the babysitter who was taking Charlotte back to her classroom. Please check her blood before you give her anything synthetic. I'm begging you, it runs in the line. Please. Harlan had come forward right away, stopping her without using force but with perfect timing. The woman didn't fight back. Her eyes were wide with something other than lunacy as she peered past him at the youngster. It was terror. The nanny had said goodbye to her. She shouldn't be here. That woman had a breakdown, and her file is closed. They had silently taken the woman away. The summary of the incident never mentioned her name. Harlan had sent a discretionary memo about the exchange and suggested a background check, but the internal system marked it as non-actionable, and the record had been deleted. He now knew why. Rosemary Ellison had tried to tell them, and someone, Camilla, had put her in the ground. Harlan stood still as a rock against the bay wall. His hands were covered, and his posture was perfect, yet his pulse had shifted. Not in a panic. Not yet, just more weight. He looked at Charlotte again. She was still asleep, and still weak in ways that she shouldn't have been. He hadn't missed a checkpoint. He hadn't let his guard down. But for some reason the danger still got through. It was in her DNA, and it had always been there. Camilla didn't make up a signature. She didn't hit or shout at anyone. But she had done something that no military court could name. But every soldier would know it. She had allowed silence become a risk. She let pride hurt her. And now a kid was paying for it. Harlan moved a little bit against the stone, not to move but to breathe. But for the first time, in a long time, breathing felt like giving up. The pulse monitor slowed down. Not dangerous, calming. The thin sheet that was pulled up to Charlotte's collarbone made her chest rise more evenly. The oxygen mask was still gently misting. One nurse quietly moved the IV, while another took the second monitor from her index finger. The harshest part of the storm was over. The room let out a silent breath. Harlan stayed by the inside wall, but he never took his eyes off the child. The head doctor took off his gloves and folded them with clinical precision before turning to address the group of senior royals who were still in the room. Her vital signs are stable. Her heart rate is steady, and her oxygen saturation is at 98. William nodded quickly, but his eyes stayed on Charlotte. But the doctor wasn't done yet. She'll need to be watched for at least 24 hours, and her file needs to be permanently updated with the mitochondrial markers that were flagged today. He turned a little, his tone becoming sharper, not unpleasant, but firm. This condition is only dangerous when no one knows about it. It's easy to handle with the right care. But if a caregiver hides family medical history, even by accident— He stopped for a moment. His eyes moved. That caregiver is now the threat. Camilla opened her mouth too fast. I didn't hide anything. I just didn't think it was important. The woman was let go because she was mentally unstable. She was fired for talking, the doctor said. Camilla's eyes lit up. You're believing her over me? No, ma'am, the doctor answered. I'm trusting the blood over everyone else. William moved forward then. His voice was soft yet strong. You had those files locked up. I was protecting her, Camilla murmured, her voice getting higher and more fragile. Do you know what the tabloids do? You know what they'd say if that woman or anyone had been linked to the family. Charlotte needed clean air, not whispers. William didn't yell. He didn't have to. She needed the truth. Camilla turned to the nurses for help. No one looked at her. Harlan's chest lifted more slowly now, but it took a lot of work. The old voice within, the one that had learned to judge threats, was gone. Instead, there was something heavier, something more like grief. He has seen IEDs miss their aim and still wreck whole lives, and now he had witnessed words, ones that had been wiped, do the same. The doctor stared at Charlotte one more time before walking to the door. He added softly, medical systems protect people until someone decides they know better. Harlan's eyes moved to the side. He didn't say anything, but the line was drawn, and it went right through Charlotte's chest. There was a quiet hiss as the doors opened. And then there was a silence that was stronger than any voice. William remained there for a long time, looking down at his daughter's sleeping face. His hand was resting lightly on the side rail of her bed. The doctor was gone. The nurses had moved back. There was only the quiet hum of the machines left. Camilla stood at the foot of the bed with her arms crossed, looking defensive. When William talked to her, he didn't look at her. Go away. Her brow rose. William, he spoke in a lower tone. Go. Now. The tone was firm. It wasn't rage. It was something colder, something that can't be changed. Camilla's lips were squeezed together tightly, but she turned around and proceeded softly toward the double doors, her heels clicking as she walked. They opened for her with a faint hydraulic sigh, and this time no assistant came after her. She left by herself. William turned to the guard after letting the door close behind her. Sergeant Crest, come with me. Harlan nodded without saying anything, and his boots made a slight sound on the antiseptic floors as he walked behind William along the hall. There was no one else there now. There was room for the medical professionals. It felt as if the world had pulled back, as if it knew this wasn't for onlookers. They stopped near a side window that was arched and looked out over the Queen's courtyard, which was just starting to become dark in the early evening light. William was silent for a bit, and then he said, "Tell me everything you can think of about Rosemary Ellison." Harlan's voice was low, yet it never wavered. I was stationed at the Eastern Breezeway when she came in through the back staff gate. There was no clearance, but she wasn't violent. She walked up to the child's nanny and said, word for word, "Please keep her away from synthetic medication. It reacts badly with her blood." "I've seen it. Please." He stopped for a moment. The nanny said she was unstable. I held her back without any problems. Logged it. "Where did you log it?" "The queue for staff incident reports." It was erased. William's hands moved a little at his sides. "And you trusted her?" "Sir, I didn't know what to believe, but I believed her fear." Harlan didn't look at the prince. He kept his eyes on the road. "When the incident file went missing, I flagged it again. An aide told me to stand down and let senior discretion handle the situation. I did what they said. There was a break. You feel bad about that?" Harlan's throat got constricted. "Yes, sir." William now looked at him thoroughly. "You did something when it mattered," he remarked. "You stepped in. You told what you saw. And today," he pointed back to the medical suite, "you saved my daughter's life." Harlan didn't say anything. The compliment didn't really hit home, since he would never forget that the warning had once touched his palms and traveled through them. William, on the other hand, got it. He didn't push. He put his hand on Harlan's shoulder for a moment, then turned back into the suite without saying anything further. There was no sound during the moment, but something deeper settled in that silence. Not yet, not reconciliation, but have faith, true and hard won. The hallway outside the Royal Medical Suite was quiet again, except for the soft, steady sound of a heart monitor coming through the half-closed doors. Harland Crest stayed at his post, exactly 4 steps from the door, standing up straight, on guard and calm. But inside him, the structure was breaking down. He had held lines while being shot at by snipers, pulled wounded troops out of burning Humvees in Helmand, and swallowed his terror, blood, and anguish while the military was quiet. He stood still as civilians yelled at him, while royals walked by without saying a word, and while the world thought he should be invisible and impenetrable. But not today. It had been a child today, not war. It had been a warning that was ignored and buried, and now it was barely alive. He turned slowly and walked inside the small room next to the main hall. It was just a service recess, a small room with a bench and a stained glass window that looked out over the western lawn. The glass threw soft, meaningless hues on the stone floor, red and gold. Harland sat down, took off his gloves, and put his hands on his face. There was no crying or shaking shoulders. The tears just poured. The strain eventually let go, and the tears came slowly and heavily. Salt, heat, and guilt streaming down a face that is used to being still. He didn't cry for himself. He sobbed for the woman they didn't believe, for the report that they hid, for the child who could have died because he followed the rules when he should have disregarded them. A sweet voice filled the room. "Sergeant?" He instantly looked up and wiped his face with the back of his palm. There was a nurse there, but she didn't have a clipboard or a report. She was just wearing navy scrubs and holding a bottle of water that she didn't provide. "I'm sorry," he murmured stiffly as he tried to get up. She shook her head. "You don't have to be. I'm not supposed to say anything, but you stood when no one else did," she added softly. "And you stayed." He tried to answer. Couldn't. She spoke rather quietly. "Because of you, she'll live." Harland's throat closed up. His eyes fell again. More tears poured, not because I was weak, but because I needed to let go. The nurse didn't wait for a thank you. She moved away to give him some room. Harland stayed there for another minute or two. He then took a slow breath, cleaned his face, and put his gloves back on. He straightened up and fixed the tunic where the cloth had wrinkled under his arm. He walked back to his post, taking the same 4 steps and carrying the same weight. But this time, there was more. Not just a protocol. Not only service, but the quiet, immovable weight of a guy who has finally realized how much silence costs and promised never to do it again. Windsor's internal systems were no longer still by the time darkness fell. At 6:42 p.m., a priority-level order was sent out via the secure royal intranet. There was no crest or fancy border, just the stark black typeface of official language and the clear authority of Kensington's legal office. Effective immediately, the Office of Royal Medical Integrity must restore, audit, and examine all archived medical documents that were previously accessed, misdirected, or repressed at the discretion of the Queen Consort's Youth Advisory Office. She is no longer allowed to see health records for children or her family until further notice. All other clearances must go through the office of the Prince of Wales or the Princess of Wales directly. There was no explanation after that. There was no need for one. In the young administration wing, aides got the order without saying anything. 2 took Camilla's digital access tokens out of their registry systems. 1 assistant discreetly and without being told to did this. They took a stack of pending outreach efforts and put them in a cabinet marked inactive. None of them said her name out loud. For hours, Camilla stayed in her quiet study. The tray with her dinner, silver cloche, and monogrammed linen had been brought to her without any fuss and left alone. No one came in to help. There was no message. No one called a car to take her to the conservatory for the evening rounds. She sat by herself, still in the clothes she wore for that morning's recording. Her folder was still next to her, but it was no longer useful as a shield. Not a punishment. Just not being there. Just not important. Harland Crest, on the other hand, went back to silently watching Charlotte's room. The light above had turned into a gentle amber. 1 nurse silently went between stations. A child's laughter echoed softly down the hall through a classroom door that was left open. Charlotte's room didn't hear the sound, but it got to him. He stood there, with no emotion, yet he was calmer now and balanced. An hour later, William left gently. His face showed signs of tiredness, but his steps were firm. He stopped next to Harland. No ceremony. No one is there. Just the 2 of them. "Thanks, Sergeant," he said. Harland didn't say anything, or salute. He nodded quietly, a nod that expressed everything words couldn't. A dad almost lost his daughter, and a soldier was almost lost. But they were both still standing, because the truth had prevented what silence almost let happen. The hallway was quiet. A thin wash of amber light came through the high windows, and made the smooth floor look like it was reflecting something. Most of the workers had left for the night. The noise and conversation of the day had faded away, leaving only a few gentle footsteps, nurses checking charts, the sound of rubber soles shuffling, and doors opening and closing far away. Sergeant Harlan Crest was alone, 4 steps from the door to room 3B, Charlotte's bedroom. The hallway smelt a little like eucalyptus and lavender, which are both good for cleaning the air. He had become used to it, to the quiet. His gloves fit perfectly, and his tunic was not ruffled. His boots were like stones that held him down. That door has a child behind it who almost perished, and he would never forget that she hadn't, because today, even if it was almost too late, someone finally stepped in. The door creaked softly. Then the handle slowly and carefully turned, and a nurse came out, leaving the door open. As she walked by, she smiled at Harlan and nodded instead of saying anything. He gazed forward. The light from the room made a soft triangle on the hallway tile. Then, from the bed, a little voice pierced the quiet. "Sergeant?" Harlan turned slowly. Princess Charlotte sat up a little, the blanket drawn up to her chest. Her eyes were still heavy with sleep, but she was calm now. The sides of her hair had fallen free. The IV still hung lightly from her arm. "I'm fine," she said softly. Harlan's throat got constricted. He didn't say anything. He just put a palm on his heart and bowed his head slightly. She grinned like a toddler might, simple and natural. Then she laid back down and softly closed her eyes. Harlan went back to his job. The door closed slowly, and behind him gentle breathing filled the room like a song. The palace looked the same from the outside, but one guard, just one, would never look at it the same way again. Should any adult be able to keep a child's medical history from them? Was it okay for the royal guard to tear down after they realized how close they came to losing her? And what would you have done if you were him? Please let us know what you think in the comments. We read them all. If you want to hear about royal guards, tap the like button, hit subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell symbol. If you know someone who still thinks guards just do what they're told, send them this video. The screen already has your next video. We'll see you at the same time tomorrow.